Everybody thinks that my parents are like my father in material.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Right? Everybody thinks my dad is like that.
Yes.
Right? Do you think my life is a joke, Castle? Then why are you standing at a bar telling jokes about my life? You know?
Isn't
Right?
that hitting you hard? I remember this time when you took the year off. My father,
Oh, okay. Let me hear this.
well, my father thought, my father said, no, why is he doing that?
Ah.
That's it's a waste of time. I didn't know that you did magic, and then you did magic at the sports center, and both myself and David said, oh, it's like you switch over to this other person,
Right.
and then later, or like after the comedy, I remember you saying this Riaad here was studying medicine, and this persona, and this persona who performs is it's actually coming closer together. Certain people that think of themselves as creative, but what I'd like actually is for everybody to think that they are creative.
Welcome to the Best Medicine Podcast. It's episode 3, season 2. The experiment continues. All right. Yes. So this week I speak to my friend, my colleague, Dr. Musaed Abrahams, creator of Behaviour, doing very, very interesting work with HIV and also digital health. He's consulting, also didn't follow the usual path, the usual medical path. I want to include him in on the Best Medicine podcast because he's at least got some medical knowledge, So, and he's a creative guy, Him and Dr. David Fredericks is my brasser. That's my brasser from back in the day. I hope to include them in on the podcast somehow when we talk to comedians and talk about wellness and creativity and things of that nature. So, guys, come see me. I'm doing a garden route tour before Ramadan. I just finished the Basim Yusuf shows, which were absolutely amazing. Hopefully, I'll make a little bit of a summary docu video based on that. That'll come out soon. And I'm going to the garden route over the this next weekend, 21st, 22nd, 23rd of February, 21st, Plettenberg Bay, 22nd, Neisner, and 23rd, George. You can get tickets at Quicket. So please enjoy this conversation with my buddy, a wide-ranging conversation with my very interesting Dr. colleague, Dr. Musaed Abrahams. So what's your podcast going to be like? First of all, what do you think?
First of all, I'm not sure that I'm not sure that I'm gonna have one.
Dude, you
I
suck.
No, I just didn't. I didn't think through it that long.
Yeah.
It was like when did I speak to you about this? Maybe 3 months before the end of the year. Last year.
Yeah.
That's when I was like resigning from my company,
Yeah.
doing consultancy. But in that time, I get introduced to a lot of people, a lot of interesting people, people of color. I'm going to say that. And for the most part on entrepreneurial journeys or in health and sometimes in alternative health. When I say alternative, it just means like non-medical part, like they're doing digital health or they're doing other things, but not like
Homeopathy.
No, not homeopathy.
You don't mean homeopathy
No,
and
no,
acupuncture and energy.
No, I don't mean that alternative
energy,
health. I should use
energy
the
health. Don't need to touch you.
This is the kind of shit that gets you in trouble when you mock.
I'm not mocking.
I'm not mocking, but I'm laughing.
You mean digital and robotics?
Well, no, just like not. I would say not not the usual medical path.
Yeah.
Which is general practice and specialization.
Right.
I mean, anything on either side of that, whether they go into management of, a health scheme or an NGO, that's not the usual, which is
Right.
medicine and specialization.
Yeah.
So I'd like to. I mean, that was the idea of the podcast: is talking to people like that, understanding what they, how they chose that path, or whether that path was chosen for them. How did they get where they are now?
Yes.
I get a lot of medical people that ask me that, right? I think I spoke about this before, especially like young, especially female doctors, right? Have been working on calls. They now want to start families, or other people that are just burnt out, to be honest.
Yeah.
And they're like, how did you move out of that? And it's a question that I always think about. But it's not that I don't think that I had a plan for it. And I don't know how many people had plans for it, how many people, it was just the path that opened up before them. That's what I want to find out from people.
Yes.
I'm just curious about it. And
I'm curious. What did I say? Is that the title?
Yes,
I'm curious.
Yes. I'm just curious.
I'm just curious. Yeah, bro. Because to a certain extent, I've had that.
Yes, exactly.
I think creative people tend to get it quicker. People are not necessarily as creative as others or have that interest. They can't even just conceptualize of doing what interests us or just following your instinct in that regard. There's something that's calling you to do something else. There's some sort of vision that you have that's a little vague, but it's there, and you trying to crystallize it over a period of time. The normal path is not sufficient.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, I think the normal path, yes, exactly. That is not enough.
Yeah.
I mean, I can only speak for myself, right? But you were like the guiding model for this, right? I just mean it in the way that, like, when we were studying,
it's like
an alternative pathway opened up for you. Even just me seeing that there's a different pathway for you, it raises that possibility.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So when you do, I do think, yes, you're right. There's certain people that think of themselves as creative, but what I'd like actually is for everybody to think that they are creative.
Everybody is creative.
Yeah. And
yes.
that they can, sometimes it just, I think more creative people, they are sometimes, it's like a muscle.
Yeah.
And you're like, between having an idea and just saying, hey, let's rock up for a podcast and see what happens.
Right.
For some people, that's a muscle that's exercised, and it's like, yeah, it's an unknown.
Yes.
But let me try it, right? For other people, it's a bit more analytical, a bit more thinking. The gap between doing something and thinking about something and taking action is a bit longer, And you know how these things are, actually. It's like, I think I had to learn through these things for myself through the hard way, when actually somebody had to tell me, actually just break it up into smaller chunks.
Yeah.
Do this little part, see how it works, do this. I had to kind of learn those things. But I do think that when we have podcasts and you listen to other creative people,
yes,
across spectrums, right? Sometimes it's scientists, sometimes it's comedians. It doesn't matter who it is, actually. You'll hear the same muscle. That's, you know what I mean?
The same themes repeating itself with the same ideas.
And the same actions,
So, for example, like I would say our mutual friend, David Fredericks, is it's definitely a funny guy. And I think on the face of it, he's creative, but he doesn't necessarily yearn for what you and I are yearning for. So it's almost like he's chosen the serious path, right? But then he uses his just creativity with humor to get through life. He's grasped a very serious profession. But when we talk, and even if we talk with serious concepts or ideas, David always breaks it with a joke. Yes. I don't know if you agree. He doesn't even delve into that. Like, to the extent that you and I will like ponder and pontificate.
Yes.
Right, he doesn't, right? Am I right? Or
no,
am I
you're right. It's just that you're talking about David now, but I know, for instance, it's how you're flexing the creativity, right?
Yeah.
So I think, for instance, I know that in his profession, he's putting out YouTube videos on ICU So there's a creativity that comes with that, right? I have to build up a PowerPoint. I'm going to do a presentation, and I'm going to see to it that it's published. But I know what you're saying is, in other words, you're flexing the creativity, but in that purely serious manner. Whereas there is a leeway, especially with his personality and actually his skill in humor,
Yes.
which I think probably I don't know because I'm not in his ward rounds. But
He's probably,
yes,
he's
I think
probably
he does have an
the
outlet
people.
for that. He's probably popular because of that, right? His knowledge and the way he's with
Personality.
people, his personality. But I hear what you're saying is that, how do you? I feel like for me there's a drive more about what's the word? Almost like meshing both parts of myself.
Right.
I remember when we were young. What I remember clearly was I didn't know that you did magic, and then you did magic at the sports center. And both myself and David said, "Oh, it's like you switch over to this other person."
Right.
And then later, or like after the comedy, I remember you saying, "This Riaad here was studying medicine, and this persona, and this persona who performs it's actually coming closer together."
Right.
So that's what I think I have a yearning for, is not to separate out so much what I'm doing in the world, which is, this part is serious, but this is who you are. Actually, I think you have to. My yearning actually is just to bring both together, just to be, appear more authentic in how you show up in the world.
You want to find your voice, your actual voice.
And I think it's harder work to keep it separate.
Yeah.
Like, in the long run, I don't want to compartmentalize myself that much.
Yes. Yes.
And we see it because we are, you especially, the skill that it takes to make jokes and to be funny, and you can see it in him. So you think, but this is, it's a talent and a skill.
Yeah.
And you seem to have it, but you, like,
what are you doing with it?
Yes. Do you want to do something,
I think he does. And I think if something was set out for him, right, he would express it within that. I feel that creativity for me is the most healing thing. Like, so that's why, I mean, with this podcast, when you and I hopefully will talk to comedians, you'll talk to like how creativity, and obviously skew towards humor, is healing or not, I think just the pure art of it and the pure creativity of it is extremely healing, but the business side of it can be disastrous and extremely psychologically scarring. And I think generally that's the case, unless, with the people when business is their art, that's something that's very different. So when I conceptualized the idea of the best medicine as a podcast, I did want to bring in wellness into it, and primarily in terms of what we were going to focus on is the creativity, and how creativity impacts on people's health. Because they always talk, you have to, in order to create great art, you have to torture yourself. And I want to delve more into that because there is struggle involved in creating great art. I think Mo spoke with you. Have you watched Mo's new season yet?
I haven't watched it.
Watched the first one?
Yes.
Now, the second one is like significantly better than the first season.
So there's three things you brought up already, right? The first part is just that you feel like it's healing.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, healing for what? Creativity helps you with healing. What do you think is healing?
Okay, so primarily from the trauma of life. Just the basic substrate of life, right, is painful. And I think if we as humans, like I've specifically chosen comedy, as my creative outlet. But I think if we all just focus on creativity in whatever form you want to do it, it'll be usually psychologically beneficial for one. That's just my instinct. I don't know if that's true because because then you have the example of the artist, and the artist is always struggling. But the artist is always compelled to do this strange thing that is interesting to other people. You know, that sometimes, you know, captures like swaths of people. Like, and there's a lot of people who just like, you know, beat away at, you know, the artistic or the profession of an artist, and then they never get anywhere, you know?
I think that becomes complicated, right? So on the one hand, just the creativity being healing or being creativity being good is, I almost feel like for myself, that's without a doubt, right? I think for myself as an
Experience.
as an overthinker,
Yeah.
I think a lot, I ruminate on things a lot, right? But actually when I don't know, do photography, or, you know, now I'm starting to sketch. I actually don't know why I want to sketch, but I'm sketching. But it takes me, you know, I'm not scrolling on my phone. I'm being present. I'm being more aware of what's in my surroundings, and that itself for me is
Better.
good. Yeah, it's better, right? But then when you're coming, there's a whole jump where you talked about. That's why I said there's two things, right? There's the creativity is dealing, but the creativity as a business or as a means for income, which I'm not sure that it's for everyone. You know, I think people have their different, number one, levels of risk. Number two, levels of what they want in their life. You know what I mean? And number three is what you're starting out with and what cards you have in your deck.
Yeah.
Do you have parents that can support you through that? You know, studies and animation and whatever. Sure, then you can go further way into thinking about things as a profession and a business, right? But if you don't, it's not to say that you actually shouldn't be creative and that you shouldn't. That's what I say. That's what I mean when I say it's a muscle. It's like when you have the instinct to do something or to create something, just go with that instinct a bit. It's coming from somewhere, right?
Yeah.
But that, and I think that is the interesting thing in your podcast. If you start talking about the, you know, the making it work as a profession, as a business, the, you know, monetization, all of these things.
Of something creative.
Yes, and how does it affect, you know, the interplay with an audience that you either need to please, or even just moving along you as a
And
as an artist.
family and
Yes.
life, and
Yeah.
you know, that's interesting. I think because that is the those are personal struggles and personal difficulties that I have also. You know, how to do both. But also to bring back what you said earlier, having parents that sort of supported that instinct. Like I have the example of my friend Bakr Brey. You know the story. Bakr Brey brought the pamphlet of the College of Magic to me,
Okay.
Standard 7. We were sitting at the prefabs at SB, and he was like, dude, let's do this thing. And then I saw on the pamphlet, you know, the white gloves, the dove, the top hat, College of Magic. And I was like, yeah, right? And he's like over the moon. He wants to do this thing. So I thought, okay, I'll give it a go. And what actually happened is that I ended up going to the College of Magic, right? And he didn't, because his parents said magic is haram.
Heavy. Yeah.
So now he's in IT. Abu Bakr, the IT specialist, right? Who had that instinct to do that, you know? And this thing of me just being allowed to do what I was doing. However, within the context of the, you know, Muslim or / Indian family pressure, you still do what you need to do.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So it's not like I would have been allowed to go and just leave the stable choice and venture off into finding myself. Even with my father, when I took that year off medicine, he said, if you're going to take a year of medicine, you're going to study something else in that year. It's going to be of benefit fit to you. So during that, my sabbatical year, I went to Upper Campus.
Yes.
And I studied Xhosa, I studied economics, I studied Afrikaans. Right?
Afrikaans.
Yeah, dude.
Oh, okay.
Right? I got the medal in Xhosa, bro. Like, how the hell did that happen? Right? And then during that year, I was like, doing magic for people on the steps, on Jamison steps. So many people said, I used to think you were phony. There's one but told me like recently, like I used to think you're such a dweeb, right,
Yeah.
for doing this type of thing. And now look at you, right? You're still a dweeb. No, why would you ever say that to a person? I embrace my dweebiness, right? I'll full on embrace my dweebiness.
Actually, I like that that sentiment about embracing your dweebiness or nerdiness, right?
Yeah.
Like when I watch John Mulaney, that's what I feel. Someone who he looks like he's like super popular now, but in all his jokes, he's like, I am a nerdy guy, and I had these nerdy preoccupations before, and now I'm just good at the way I express myself. So I actually like that component.
Yes.
But you're talking about that thing about your parents. So I mean, in some ways, it's a sad story. Who knows? Like with Abu Bakr, right? But that's a whole other discussion where we can talk about, haram and what you can and can't do. But I remember this time when you took the year off. My father.
Oh, okay. Let me hear this.
Well, my father thought. My father said, no. Why is he doing that? That's it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then years later, like he goes to your show and he sees your specials and he's like, Riaad is good. And I think, okay, but
right. I remember
at that time, you literally said it wasn't a good idea, and he wasn't harsh about it. He just said, "No, this is a waste of time. You should just finish medicine." And and I said, "No, but he just wants to see what is."
So the point is, the point is, so I did have that. I like. A lot of people thought that now he's gone wayward. He's not going to finish. But me and my family knew, no, I will finish.
Yes.
So it wasn't the concern, right? So even in my mind, there was no thought in my mind that I wouldn't go back and finish, right? And to a certain extent back then, I didn't even realize how other people would be thinking, this is such a weird thing to do, and why would you do it? I learned later on from my parents that this was like a big thing. To a certain extent with my family, the thing about me is that I was actually protected from all those ideas. My parents just didn't speak about it. So, in family, sometimes people just talk and we just were protected from the ideas. And I was very naive, I would say, for many years, and I think to a certain extent I still have this naivete as part of my personality.
I must say, knowing you at that time, you look naive as well. No,
always confused, like I'm seeing something for the first time.
Can I ask a question?
Like that? Is that what you mean?
No, I'm joking.
No, that's how.
Can I ask you a question though?
Yeah.
What about your parents? Prepare them for that, right? Because I think even when we bring it back to David, there's a certain amount. I don't know. I feel like you probably have it the least. I have it. David probably has it more. Like it's just like which I think I have in me, which is what will people say? Because that's what I felt from my
what
parents.
Will people say?
Not exactly said from my parents, but felt. So that Asan Minhaj special, that thing, that Indian saying, which is what will people say? That's exactly, I felt like, this is exactly how I know this feeling. But what prepared your parents in their lives to think that, okay, no, for Riaad, he can explore this. We can protect him around this, because that's what they did, right?
Yeah, everybody thinks that my parents are like my father in material.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Right? Everybody thinks my dad is like that.
Yes.
Right? Do you think my life is a joke, Cassim? Then why are you standing at a bar telling jokes about my life? Right?
Listen, that hit me hard.
I know.
I was crying.
Yeah, I know. That's the first week, bro.
Is it?
Right? And people thought this Riaad can act. I was for real scared shitless. That uncle just yelled at me, right? And I just went with it. I actually don't know. I actually haven't delved into that. Now that you're saying that, I'm going to have a conversation with my parents and ask them about it.
Yeah, I think maybe as you becoming an adult. I mean, I'm 48 already, so you think that everything is worked out, you know, but you're still working things out, and they were still working things out, right? So just to even be encouraging, you know, whether overtly or covertly, like, but by them allowing you, because they did allow you to do it,
Yeah.
right? It's encouraging in its own, right? Just the choice, like what, you know, what in their makeup
Allowed
say
for
about
it.
it. Yeah, I sometimes think studying medicine, because both your parents are doctors, you there's a certain hardship in. I felt hardship in medicine. I had ADD, but there's a certain hardship of studying it and being a doctor, that you almost don't automatically assume that your children should do medicine. I honestly feel like that, right? So that
Yeah.
alone opens your mind to what else can they become. But I wonder,
I
because
don't know
this is
for
the
them.
arts, right? Like, this is the arts.
I don't think for them.
Mm.
I kind of think it is a mixture. Like if I were to speculate, just the fact that I was always by the book,
Yes, yes, yes.
generally studious. If I
Yes.
say something, I will generally follow through with
Yes.
it, right? So it was the trend of how I behaved up to that point in time. They always knew that I had this other side of me,
Mm.
right? That came through with the magic.
Yes.
I actually since I was a kid, like I would perform,
Mm.
be studious, right? And then perform, like the two different people that you were speaking about,
Yes, yes, yes.
right? And then I think my mother was connected to me in the sense of allowing me to try things out. I think my father would have been less behind it. I would think so. But my mother would have sort of allayed his fears. So him saying that if I have to take a year off, I go study something else, I would think that's coming from him. I haven't asked him, but that's directly coming from him. It would not have been a condition that my mother
Yes, 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 yes.
imposed on me. Right, so you would have had more fear. Because my father came here when he was 2, I mean, left his entire family in India, came with a aunt, a relative, and he started a whole new life here and sort of moved between certain families, to a certain extent. I think my father, feels he belongs, but also doesn't feel he belongs. There's the story of my father going back to India for the first time after, I think, completing medical school. And back in the day, they used to go by boat, right? And his actual father, he was a postmaster general or something, and he had connection with the people in the dock. And usually the people aren't allowed onto the boat, right? So they would wait until the people are allowed. But he was allowed on the boat before,
Yeah.
And then he, I think, noticed my father, because it's not like FaceTime back in the day. There's pictures, but writing letters. And the story goes is that he taps my father on his shoulder and he says, "Are you Nisar Moosa?" Right? And he says, "Yes, I'm your father." Changed it in my, and
That's crazy.
yeah. When my sister, especially my sister, and I heard that story, we both were like proper chunking, right? It was quite, but he doesn't really show that, any of that emotion as much. But those are and then you see the other family members, who look like us, but they're American or they're from India. They're proper Indian, but they look like us. It's like, and they act like us,
They act like you.
I mean,
That's a great thing, though. That sort of genetic. I don't know what it is.
similarities.
Yes.
Also the interest in artistic pursuits came through for them more in music. But it's really evident. I mean, a lot of the guys in America, the doctors who follow that, a lot of them were involved in music as well, you know, and art.
You know, just because this is a similar story, I've got my cousin,
Yeah.
who I'm very close to. He's like my brother, Noor.
Yeah.
But he's quite gruff with me.
I saw him at
Yes.
Basim show.
Yeah, you see, I saw him there in the video, actually. And he's quite gruff with me sometimes, right? And then I go to Vancouver, which honestly, it feels like the other side of the world. And I meet this cousin who have never met before, you know? And he's a cardiologist, and I stay at his house. So he's my cousin, right? He's like my second cousin. And I'm driving to the conference, and he's driving me to the conference, and he's like, what are you doing now? So what are you here for? So I said, no, I made this app, and you know, an app. What are you, a doctor? Like, and honestly, but the way he's saying it, the cadence, the rhythm, the voice, even the way his expression, he looks exactly like Noor. Exactly like Noor. It's like that's why I was like, that's a crazy sort of genetic, you know, the way you speak.
Madness, you're seeing the similarities.
But just to get back to your dad, I mean, first of all, that is like a oddity story.
That's a story.
But do you ask your dad? This is what I don't do. I'm going to be honest. But because I feel like it's hard to. Like, do you ever ask your father about that and ask him, like, how did you feel? Like, what were you thinking? Like, I mean, because that is, like, me as an outsider, that is like a curious question, right? Like, do you have that same, like...
I think the only person who has that relationship with him is my mother.
Yeah.
Who knows that?
But why wouldn't you just ask him?
It's just it sort of never comes, it's never come up. But I think, you know, that's one of the things that I think those conversations must be had now. I think it's very important. It's like he shies away from those things.
Yeah.
Like he shies away from it, and he just goes, if I didn't do this, I would never have met your mom, and I would have never had you guys, and all of those things. So he's just, I think he's happy, or that's his approach to it. That's the story that he says. But it must be there must be some trauma. My mother said that no, he got a lot of love from the families that he stayed with.
Yes.
So that's the thing. He got a lot of love. He was doted upon.
Yes.
So that's why he's okay.
Yes.
You know? But he is very quiet.
But I mean, this is just a curiosity for me and people my age, is how do we speak to our parents, but especially our fathers? And do we, like, even the way you answered me now, right? You're saying, oh no, you made sense of it in this way. I'm not even talking about making sense. I'm just talking about how did you feel?
What did he say?
What was your
Now,
emotion?
I need to ask him those things.
What was your thinking?
Yes.
Like, just from,
It's almost like
no judgment, actually.
No,
right?
It's almost like we set this way of communicating.
Yes.
And it's almost through my mother.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's just something that developed over the years. And I think, you know, we need to have more direct discussions. And this definitely now be a very interesting thing to find out. And, you know, I've always wanted to get him on camera, you know, to speak about these things. But maybe just, you know, having just a normal heart-to-heart private conversation. Well,
I'm shaking my head mainly because I have this thought all the time, and I'll sit there and I'll watch my dad there, and then I feel like saying,
yeah,
like,
you want to have something.
Yeah, I just want to ask, like,
real conversation.
but I can't throw out like how do I just into that deep conversation suddenly, right? But there's never angles to go into deep.
But you and I both do that though.
What?
I think both you and I will ask a deep question to people spontaneously.
Oh yeah. Well, this is what I'm saying, but not to my dad. This
Yes.
is what I'm saying.
Yes.
Is that I'll sit there and he's watching Al Jazeera, and I'll want to like spring it.
Yes.
Just spring it out.
Just
and
hey,
say,
let's
Dad,
get
how
going.
do you feel about that time when you stopped studying medicine? Like, just tell me.
Yeah,
But I don't.
you don't.
But I want to, but I don't. But I wonder how many of us have that. Like, I think you're
I
right.
think a lot of
I think
people.
you settled in that rhythm of what you talk about. But I have more curiosity, right? Because at a certain time, your parents took care of you, but we are in that age where it has to switch. You know, I was listening to my sister-in-law say, like, yeah, you know, we can look after you now, right? Like, just like I want to present myself honestly to my parents, I'd like to know who they are before they're gone. Like, I do want to know that, right? Like, not who the role of mommy and daddy, like the actual who are you? Because that was like a strong story, right?
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
you growing up here in
Yeah,
southern
dude.
suburbs and talking about
So when we
trauma and healing.
no, when we talk to the comedians,
Yes.
we'll delve into this. But also, I also want to do like physical health. Now, you also embarked on a journey recently of now. What did you do? Boot camp. You know,
Yes, yes,
how
yes.
long you been doing that? You just started now.
No, I restarted.
Restarted,
So I
okay.
I did this like a fitness boot camp, probably about I think 8 years ago. Then I had a back injury, which it seems like everybody like my age has a back injury.
Right.
But I had a back injury, and I kept on wanting to go back to it, and it kept on having a spasm. So I dropped it, you know. But just and then I restarted now, right? But what I find is, which I always think must be my ADD, right? But I forget what works for me, and then just to repeat what works for me. So for me, I do much better in a class. I do much better because there's a social component, but there's also just like the pitching up for me is the hard part. But then the class, just getting through the class, I do about 60% more exercise than I do on my own.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So
So
yeah, so doing it again, it's
just a question about the ADD. Trevor Noah said something interesting about it. It's not like you can't concentrate. It's more like you don't know what to concentrate on. Would you like identify with that framing or not?
no, it's not that you don't know what to concentrate on. It's that you can't choose.
You can't choose.
Yes. So the best way that I've heard it explained is that, you know, in your frontal cortex is in charge of basically it's your executive functioning, right? So it's choosing what to do, when to do it. So somebody who doesn't have it can say, okay, this is the highest priority thing that I have to do, and then just do it, right? Whereas, you know, I will see a list of 10 things to do, and I'll haphazardly choose whichever one is the most urgent, whichever one is the most novel, you know what I mean? And so you, even if something is important, but it's non-urgent, it will get pushed lower. That's why we're bad at admin and bad at all of these different things.
Right.
But the best way that I would describe is that in your frontal cortex, you have a traffic controller, right? And that traffic controller is asleep, which means that the traffic is not flowing smoothly, right? And this is actually the reason why when people say, you know, why are you giving a stimulant?
Yeah.
And why is a stimulant slowing you down? It's not slowing you down. It's waking up the traffic controller. So you're taking, you know, Vyvanse or Ritalin. It wakes up that traffic controller, and the traffic controller can say, oh, choose to do this, choose to do that, choose to do that, you know? And so, yeah, it's not to say there's a lack of focus. It's that there's a lack of control of focus, you know? It's not the only component to ADHD, but that is one of the big ones.
Yeah.
And the flip side of that actually is that when you exercise, when you eat correctly, you know, when you don't use your phone, these things actually help you with focus. You know, so I know if I exercise very hard, if I swim or run, and I wish I don't run. I don't know why I said run now. I want to run, but I don't run. But when I swim, for instance, the rest of the day is easier. It's like the traffic control is awake, and I can choose what to do. And then there's the other side of it, which I sometimes think about creativity, if coming back to creativity, is that, and you probably know this more than I do, but in the entertainment industry, in the creative arts, there are a lot more ADHD people, right? So it's not to say that it makes you more creative, but sometimes I feel like if I want to be creative, that I should not take the medication. You know?
Your sense is that.
My sense is that. It's like, oh, I want things to be open, and like now in this conversation,
Right.
it's wide ranging. Like my brain is going for different ideas, You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas if I was on my medication, I'd be a bit more deliberate and calm and
So you can
focused.
also manage it as a tool. You say, I'm going to use this now as a tool, like in terms of the medication, and I'm going to leave it when I don't need that tool, when I want to
Yes, yes. So if I know
favor
yes,
another side to myself.
yes, this is when things are working well,
Yeah.
right? And I'll just talk about like when things are working well. Yes, you can actually choose. You can say, oh, I'm going to be in meetings all day, and actually I can hyper focus on these meetings because I'm interacting with these people, and I want my ideas, and I'm not going to take it because I know I don't have a problem with juggling all of these different tasks in this meeting or in these meetings. But if I know I have to sit down for 4 hours and and complete the notes or complete a task like completion, that's when I know, oh, I have to take my stimulant, I have to sit down, I'm going to do the work. You know what I mean? Because you need both sides. You need I would say the widening ideation side, but then you need the narrowing side to complete things. I'm sure you have comedians
I think
that you know that
this will
like,
be very interesting. Like, I mean, and especially, so also in terms of our development of our medical knowledge. Like, I also want to do a little bit of that, but where do I get the time to do that? Also, or have we done enough? We can just sort of read and, assimilate these ideas. I noticed you asked David about like a course, just also developing,
yes,
the medical side of things. Like I wanted to do that also. I went to Dr. Mati. I need to get back on the HPCSA and all of those things because I haven't been.
Shahid, are you talking about Shahid?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The man with the most beautiful handwriting, like he completely challenges the stereotype of a doctor. Like, I mean, it's like almost a font.
Yeah.
Huh?
I mean, Shahid, Dr. Mati, for the listeners. I mean, he's just a beautiful person, actually.
Yeah.
Like, in every way. I worked with him for, must be 8 or 9 years in Kailicha, right?
Yeah.
But just, I don't know. He's got all his medical knowledge, but it's also just imbued with, like, just compassion, kindness. Like, everything you want as an example. Doctor. Yes. And you were so good at, like, leading us as well. Sorry, this is just an aside. But I like to give credit when I feel I don't say these things out loud a lot, but I used to learn such a lot from his his leadership. He insisted on having tea every day with everyone, all the doctors, and lunch. And you didn't often get that in busy clinics. And then you in the end you feel compelled to help out your colleagues because you actually do have a bond with your colleagues. You know what I mean? But anyway, to come back to this thing about medicine, right? It's that I do think studying medicine is like a privilege, and we did have it, and we don't practice in that way in seeing patients, right? When you see me chat to David and ask these things, and I actually phoned him in the week because I feel like if you don't see patients for a while, will you just pick it up, right? Will you pick up the knowledge, like you're saying? Can I read the latest journal and just pick up the knowledge and feel that way? Because different people are different, right? Your intelligence might be able to handle that. I just have a feeling for myself that I need to immerse myself again if I want to get in any kind of thinking of myself as good in that, right? Because I don't underestimate the profession and what you need to be good. I think you must respect that. But it is a question in my mind actually, like you were saying, oh, what did you do with HPCSA? Do I take in David's mind it's like, no, you just need a refresher course.
Yeah.
One refresher course. And I'm like, David, that's not what I think is enough for myself.
You said, one refresher course, come help us on the weekend. We overworked. There's too little of us. Just stitch, bruh. Just stitch. I want the dude to stay there. I'll tell you what to do. If you don't know what to do, come to me. No, but I would think that. Just come. Like, you see, that's also David can cut past protocol because he will see what is the closest to what you're trying to achieve. Yes. And you will say, very often he'll say, that's a waste of time. Right?
and we, like, I would just, oh no, you must do this thing now, do the thing. But you will go, that's a waste of time. Don't do that. Do this. Do that. Do the other. You know. So that's how his brain works. I think it's always worked like that. So, and also, like, I mean, action focused
Yes.
person, which is
Yes.
why he was drawn to emergency medicine.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. It's almost like, I don't know if that gives you sometimes your personality, that gives you a security almost, you know. These are the things you do now in every situation, right? And just do those things well. And if this doesn't work, you know, you'd rather do it like this, but just like that. Whereas, you know, a lot of medicine is all, you know,
For sure,
out
yeah.
there.
It's about what is more, I would say, codified, like that is, right? It's a lot of more protocols, and yet there's still art in it, right?
Yeah.
Of choosing when, because that comes from experience.
If I asked him, right, why is he not doing surgery? Like, why is he not a surgeon?
Why would you suddenly think surgery?
I would just think, because in terms of what I think his skill set would be, you know, like maybe it's less social. A surgeon is less social, maybe, you know. Maybe likes to solve puzzles, which is why it does the ICU thing.
Yeah, I mean, number one, we shouldn't talk about him in his absence like
Yeah.
this, because I think you should just have him on. And
Yeah.
these are literally interesting questions to
Right.
me. But I know why for instance, I was a GP locum for a very short time. And in hindsight, I can only speak in hindsight, because then I realized, oh, I was not cut out for that, because I like to work collaboratively. I like to work with some, you know, equals, like I did in the HIV clinic. You know, I'm working here, but Shahid is very good at dermatology. I can ask him a question on this, and I can learn. I'm constantly learning. It's constantly changing. But I need that collaboration. I did not like working alone as a GP on my own and just, you know, phoning a specialist now and again. It wasn't for me. But all of those different specialities, I feel almost like you self-select based on your personality and your, you know, what you see. Like I thought I would like surgery, but I hated surgery actually. Like when I did a
Actually, yes,
surgery rotation, I didn't like it at all. You know, I liked medicine.
Yeah.
You know, I liked peds, but again, I think there was a bit more like, oh, what is the diagnosis? That's the game part.
Yeah.
Whereas surgery, I just didn't appreciate that, you know, that kind of speciality. But I knew very early on, like I think as soon as I graduated, as soon as I worked as an intern, I thought, oh, I'm not going to specialize. There's nothing that I love that much to do my whole life in one thing. There's nothing like that.
So I think we need to wrap this up now. This is to be continued. I think this is going to be exciting. So the main thing is we're going to try to do this on Saturdays, all right? Inshallah. And
Inshallah.
and I just need to figure out where's everybody going to sit, you know?
Oh, if you have a guest.
Yeah, because then otherwise I must now get another person to run this, that, and the other. I like the fact that, you know, you can just come in here like it was.
Oh, yes,
here.
yes, yes,
We just
exactly.
got here, press play. You know, obviously I'll get more cameras in the future, but we want it to be plug and play, and then we will follow the experimentation approach. We will do it and adjust, right, based on what we learned through doing it.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I did not know you were launching into the podcast immediately. I thought we were going to warm up to some stuff. Yeah, you did. I felt... yeah.
This is me. 'Cause
Yeah,
I know what you know. Because I have conversations with you.
Yes,
You
yes,
have
yes,
this depth of knowledge, which you haven't even like expressed, because you're very well read with all of, with a lot of these techniques, and you understand things. You can reference a lot of learned individuals, and I know that you have this depth of knowledge. It's just you have sometimes a issue with, you know, taking the step
Definitely.
immediately. So I'll help you with that, and then you just do what you do, bro.
Do you know, I went to this guy. Because I haven't been in one in a very long time, an Islamic bookshop.
Yeah.
And I know this guy, Adib, from a while. And I saw that he because it felt out of context that I saw this Brené Brown. Do you know Brené Brown? So he had this book there and it says Daring Greatly. And I was like, oh, like, why do you have Brené Brown in this Islamic bookshop, you know? And then he said, oh yeah, I read it. And I thought, what? You know, she's talking about courage. And I thought, yeah, I have to open up a bookshop. And I thought, that's great, you know? You know what I mean? You're getting your inspiration from everywhere.
Yeah.
But that inspiration to take that first step, sometimes you do need a friend to nudge you.